AJ, how you doing, bro?
Hey, how you doing, Akko?
Very good, man. Very good. What's your question?
So, it's gonna be about World of Warcraft. So I was wondering, since you played Elder Scrolls Online and as well Final Fantasy, I don't know too much about Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
but for me, one of the what I found an issue because I switched to casual play,
hmm
it's kind of like getting gear and how the gear before Cataclysm was
Yeah.
and right now. Like
Uh-huh.
before Cataclysm, you even when you craft, let's say, some blue items, they have some kind of like a secondary stats, if you remember, just like basically like give you a hit or something,
Yeah.
nothing specific.
Yeah. Yeah.
And right now, there's that all is lost. Recently we just got some raid tier sets, that give class specific like bonuses. But I
Yeah.
was wondering, what do you think if Blizzard adds something like Elder Scrolls Online has? Like you go in a dungeon and it offers you like drops of gear sets that just give like, let's say, bonus like 200 critical strike or 200 haste or
So just to be clear, are you talking about the individual piece offers you just like so it doesn't offer
no,
anything
like
else?
a tier set,
A tier set.
like a dungeon sets.
All right.
Yeah, like a two
So
pieces give you like 200 critical strike.
yeah. Okay, I'm well in favor of that. In fact, I think one of World of Warcraft's weakest parts right now is the lack of imagination when it comes to gearing. World of Warcraft sort of has this over-convoluted gearing system that literally amasses to nothing. There's like a shit ton of gear pieces in the game, but there's only really one right piece of gear for every single class in the game. So ultimately, 90% of all gear in World of Warcraft is completely useless to the player. There's only like these 10% of pieces that you want. The rest is filler pieces until you get the ones that you want. Now, for World of Warcraft, we really, and this is something that I think Blizzard should absolutely start doing, they have to start realizing that not every single person raids, and not every single person does dungeons. A lot of people just play in the open world. That's where the vast majority of people play the game, is in the open world, doing
I agree.
old shit,
Yeah, I agree.
enjoying their lives, right? Because they're not slaves to the dungeon system and they don't care for hardcore. They just want to have fun. Where are the outdoor pieces that actually equals Mythic in terms of item level and power, but it's tier sets, like the bonuses that it provides is open world shit. So if you kill something, you run faster and, you can jump higher or, you get wacky sets. So things that do wacky bullshit. Maybe you get a tier piece that every single time you kill something, you have a button that you can use to teleport. The problem is that it can teleport you anywhere on the map. So it can take you to a whole new fucking zone. It can put you on top of a mountain. Just funny shit that people really enjoy in the open world that brings the open world more to them and bring them to the open world. Once you go into a raid with this shit, the tier set bonuses is disabled because you're no longer in the open world, and therefore you're never going to use these tier sets in the raid. You're going to use them in the open world where they're fun and they provide you with something else. Blizzard sort of tried to do this. I don't know if you remember with Covenants. They tried to do this with the Covenant gear. The problem was the Covenant gear was so low item level that by the time you got heroic gear, you were no longer using your Covenant outer world pieces because they were just not high enough. Like your damage would be too low and it would just suck. So I really think Blizzard should do stuff like this. I also believe that dungeon should have its own set. For a long time, we could have claimed that dungeons is simply the prelude to raiding. That is no longer fucking true. There is a reason why PvPers have their own gear in World of Warcraft and why raiders have their own gear in World of Warcraft. It's because it's not the same thing. People who PvP don't automatically raid, and people who raid don't automatically PvP. But it's no longer true that Dungeons is just the prelude to raiding. Dungeons is now an authentic piece of content that a lot of people do exclusively. They only run dungeons. So why the fuck is the gear still shared? between raids and dungeons. And I'm not saying that you can't have one or two pieces from a dungeon be very good in a raid, and vice versa. But dungeon sets, again, make it interesting. Give people sets that allow them to deal with... So this is sort of an easy thing. There are affixes that players will not do on that week because that affix sucks, and therefore tanks just refuse to play on that affix. Well, why not bring out dungeon sets that sort of help the tank deal with that affix fixed? Now people have multiple pieces of gear. It makes fights a hell of a lot more interesting. It makes gear a hell of a lot more interesting. And it's creative, which is the whole fucking point. Like, Blizzard, this is a problem that I have with almost everything that Blizzard does. They seem to constantly play the safe game, right? Where it's
Exactly. Yeah.
you can have Arkman, you can have war mode gear as well, where this is gear purely for outworld PvP. That's it. If you have war mode on and you have this gear, you're doing crazy damage to other players. You can take more damage from other players. So it's like fun. You get speed ups and shit. So it sort of incentivizes people to want to fight in the open world because it makes the fight so much more interesting. You can have crazy crap for that gear because it's open world. It's supposed to be crazy and nuts. But Blizzard seems to have this consistent problem where it's almost like they're too conservative with a lot of the systems that they implement, and also Blizzard's mindset. And hopefully that's changing. At least listening to Ian Hazzikostas in the most recent interviews, he seems to have finally fucking realized that the minimum amount of players in World of Warcraft, like a very, very small minority of World of Warcraft players, actually give a fuck about raids and dungeons. The vast majority of players are casuals that right now sort of do raids and dungeons because it's the only fucking thing to do in the game. If you ask the vast majority of WoW players, what would you rather do? Build a house or raid? They would tell you, build a house. Like, I don't want to raid. I don't know what else to do though. So I just fucking raid because there's nothing else. But I don't want to raid. I would much rather be off doing something else, but there is nothing else to do. So here I am, you know, I'm raiding once or twice a week just for the fuck of it. And sort of thanks to this priority that Blizzard had, where they wanted to be the hardcore MMO. They wanted to be the MMO for dungeoneers and raiders and PvPers. Everything was designed to sort of accentuate and prioritize those systems. So the casual person, the person who's literally just there to enjoy the game was never designed for them because the focus was always on this end game stuff, you know, the end game systems in WoW.
Yeah.
And it is important that Blizzard brings that back.
That's what I was well thinking when with the question. I'm like, one reason why Blizzard would not add that stuff that anything can provide tier sets is because of the end game and hardcore player base. Because they remember Legion when everything was giving legendaries and stuff. The hardcore player base was literally like playing till their asses fell off. Like they wanted to get, and I think Blizzard is afraid of that they don't want to force on players. Because they're not gonna force it on me as a casual player because what I do is gonna provide me. But the problem is when you see a hardcore player, he's gonna want to do every single piece of content every day just to get what he needs.
Yeah.
And they're afraid of that. That's what I think maybe why they don't want to add it like that.
I mean, I'm just quickly checking here. All right. So just quickly checking. So we'll do all bosses and we'll do normal, right? This is on Warcraft logs. Yeah. So I'm on Warcraft logs. This is parses for all bosses on normal. So if there is someone that is somewhat going to fucking raid, it will be here, right? Whether it's casual raider, hardcore raider, doesn't fucking matter. You have 22,000 hunters have passed here, 22,000 warlocks, 17,000 shamans, 7,000 druids, 33,000 demon hunters, that's currently the lead, 38,000 hunters, that's currently the lead. The highest one here is 41,000, and that is Destruction Warlock. 41,000 Destruction Warlocks have parsed so far. Now, let's imagine that every single one of these parses is completely unique. It's a unique parse from literally every single one of these passes from an individual that is completely unique, which it isn't, but let's imagine that it is. This is not even a million players. Nowhere near a million players.
Not even close.
If you count up all of this, you might get to 100, 150,000, maybe even 200,000 players. So if we imagine that World of Warcraft has, say, for example, 1.5 million players in total, and we say, well, not everyone parses, but remember, you only need one person to actually log in a raid for everyone to be logged. So let's imagine that we double that number. Let's say we go from 300 to 600,000. That still says it's not the majority of players that is actually raiding.
Exactly.
It's a much smaller number of players that is raiding than players who aren't fucking raiding in World of Warcraft. So why in the fuck are we designing the game for the minority of the player base? Every other MMO doesn't do this. Final Fantasy, 90% of their game is casual. ESO, 90% of their game is geared towards the casual player. Guild Wars 2, exactly same thing. Star Wars Republic, exactly the same thing. World of Warcraft, for some reason, treats a minority of its player base as if it's the only fucking player that matter. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't provide hardcore players with content. Of course you should. I used to be a hardcore raider.
They need stuff.
Yeah, but I used to be a hardcore raider. I have so much respect for hardcore players because I know how much it takes out of you to actually do that content. But you do not deserve special treatment. You should get the bare minimum required to keep you happy. The rest of the game should be for the casual player that just wants to have fun, because that's what games are all about. I hate the fact that whenever you talk to someone and you're like, there's nothing to do in World of Warcraft, listen to their fucking answers. It's like, what are you talking about, bro? There's the raid, there's Mythic Plus, there's PvP. It's like, yeah, all right, great. All the fucking hardcore content. What I want is the fun content. Fun for me. Like, I don't want to raid. I don't want to do your fucking dungeons and your raids. I want stuff that I care about, which is the story, which is exploration, which is open world shit. I'm sorry, when Ian Azikostas sat there and he said, well, you know, we would love to give people housing, but in order to give people housing, we would have to cancel a raid tier, so we can't do that. Fuck the raid tier. Like, cancel the goddamn raid tier. Give us fucking housing. Because guess what? You're going to make far more people happy with housing than what you're going to piss the fuckers off with a raid tier that they've lost. They've had their decade in the fucking sun, right? For a decade now, the hardcore player base have gotten everything that they fucking want from the game, and the casual player base are the ones that have to live off the scraps. So whenever the content is old, now the casuals can play it, fucking finally, right? I can go solo a bunch of raids to get the pets that Blizzard promised me and the mounts that all the raiders already got, but now I can go farm it over and over again and hopefully I get the drop as well. It's like, fuck the hardcore player. They should get content, but they should not be the main focus of what you're doing in a game. Like, 100% not. You could do both, Mozart, but I'm sort of making a point here, so of course I'm being extremely hyperbolic. Anyway, sorry, ranting. What were you saying, bro?
No, I would say when you mentioned players housing, I'm like, to switch it for, let's say, for a raid tier, I'm always for it. Like, raid tier is gonna last just that season. And it's, right now in Shadowlands, nobody plays anymore like Castle Nathria or Domination, whatever. Yeah. But if you have housing, that's gonna go to the next expansion. You're always gonna have a system that you can work on and add on to it non-stop, and there's always gonna be like pet battles. There's always the player base is gonna build up around it just to work on it, and you give fun to people. Player housing, it's universal and will give a lot of stuff to people. Player housing is a social. It literally is a social feature. If you go to play Final Fantasy, and even if you hate Final Fantasy, do yourself this favor: go play it. Go to the housing district in Final Fantasy XIV. Go look. Do you guys realize there are websites listing every single one of the venues and the times when they open for nightclub, for theater, there's actual theater companies, by the way, that puts on plays. Preach literally just had a theater company do a play of his entire like MSQ for ARR. The nightclubs, the brothel, there's even brothels, although they're technically against the rules, but there are brothels.
it's a complete fucking social experiment. It's what they do. People go to these nightclubs and they have the time of their lives, RPing and playing with other people and hanging out with other people, and that's just what they do. The fact of the matter is, it's something like, not just housing, we can forget about housing for now. World of Warcraft needs systems for the casual player that just wants to play, just wants to have fun with their friends. More guild activities where you can build social guilds. This is sort of what Final Fantasy solved, by the way, for a lot of people. And I realize there's a lot of people here that don't give a fuck about Final Fantasy 14, but use what works in other games and make them better. This is what World of Warcraft used to do. This is why World of Warcraft was the #1 MMO for so fucking long. Here's an idea that is gonna shatter your fucking brain. Do you know that the vast majority of Final Fantasy players do not actually raid with their guilds? It's not why guilds exist in Final Fantasy 14. They have two words. They have statics, and then they have free companies, which is their guild, their version of a guild. Free companies are social things. You join that to build a house or an FC house, to join parties, to RP, or to do treasure hunts and stuff like that. It's very social. Static is your raiding group. So it's called a static, that's where you raid. And most statics aren't in the same guild. People join guilds purely for social stuff because that's how the game was built. There's so many social things to do that you join a guild sort of that likes the same social activities that you do, and then you raid with your static. Through they have a link poll system, and they have all sorts of systems that you can invite people into, and it allows you to basically have your own group that you raid with, but also your own group that you social with. We've all said this for a long time. Guilds in World of Warcraft feel dead. It feels like the community has been destroyed, and the reason why guilds feel so dead is because, well, outside of raiding, guilds have no real place in the game anymore. There's nothing for guilds to really do in the game. The guilds have lost their social function, and it's not because people don't want to be social, it's there's nothing to be social with, right? And we need to fix that in World of Warcraft. We need to fix that. Anyways, did you have anything else that you wanted to add or ask before we move on?
No, I just had one question about those tier sets. What's your thoughts about it? And pretty much,
I love the idea.
Thank you for your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the question, dude. Take care of yourself, man.
Hey, take care, man.
Peace.